Professor Howard Williams takes you on a journey through time and space, exploring death and memory, past and present. Archaeodeath.
Hello, Professor. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you, Rabbi? Good to see you.
I'm doing good. How do you like my new green screen here?
It's time and space, relatively dimensional and timey-wimey. I love it. It's brilliant.
You
Good to
know
see
what?
it.
It's a functional reason. So today I'm
Of
filming
course.
in my garage, and my garage is a mess. And so I didn't want anyone to have to see that and be taken out of our conversation. So I thought, let's just green screen and see how that goes.
Are you sure we're not going to do Rick and Morty if we're in the garage now? We're not going to be suddenly... I have this image of you sort of mashing up your various rabbi duties with interdimensional travel in a more Rick way now than a Doctor
You
Who
know what's
way.
funny is I've never watched Rick and Morty.
Oh, okay. Well,
So,
what can I
my
say?
children have, and they tell me it's pretty good. I just have never had the chance to actually watch Rick and Morty.
It's
Um,
a very,
so
it's like a daft and dark spin-off of various other comedy cartoons, and has lots of time travel and interdimensional elements to it, and it's very silly.
Oh, I love it. Well, and I'm ready to go. I have my soda because I need caffeine. I have water, and I have my favorite archaeologist. Listen, I don't have the opportunity to drink wine at noon my time, but
I,
drink some
I,
for me.
that's why I'm gloating from across the channel. You know what I'm like at my British gloating. I've been doing a lot of British style gloating on social media, smugness
A little
gloating,
bit.
faux
I like it
superiority.
though.
It's a colonial legacy. No, it's not. I'm serious. But I've got my glass
I'm
claw beaker.
trying
This is a
to.
replica glass claw beaker, early 7th century. Isn't it gorgeous?
It is very gorgeous. I remember we had a discussion about why it had those kind of outcroppings
We
on
did.
the glass.
We did derive some dolphins
I am
originally on Roman
pulling up
glassware.
my notes right
You
now.
get yourself ready. Yeah, that's fine. There's all sorts of lovely
I
people
figured we
joining
have
us.
a little hello, everyone. And of course, as you know, I am joined by the incomparable Dr. Howard Williams, also known as Archaeodeath. My son Malcolm today said that we basically have a podcast. It's just that we're doing this via TikTok. That because he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, we have this. Uh, we do this Doctor Who like kind of deep dive every couple weeks after we finish a set of the series or the specials." And he's like, "Oh, so you guys basically have a podcast? Is really
Yeah.
what you're doing, except you're doing it on TikTok." And
The
I
only
was
thing
like,
that makes this not a
it's true.
podcast is I haven't gone bald yet, and I don't get Graham Hancock on every second day. So apart from that, it was exactly the same thing.
This is true. This is true.
But
And why would you be bored? Look at me. I'm adorable. I cannot possibly be boring.
I
Now,
was
that
taking. I
being
was doing
said,
it.
you have not bored me either, and I get bored quite easily. You can ask anyone who knows me very well. So there is that. Okay, so I have my notes.
I
Now
have
we
mine.
are only for those who are here. We are only discussing the specials that Matt Smith did before turning into Peter Capaldi. We then later on in our next one we'll be discussing the first series that enjoys Peter Capaldi. Yeah,
season
yeah,
8.
because we
Yes.
tried to do a whole season plus specials in one go, and it was just too much.
There's a lot of archaeological, timey-wimey, memory, faith themes in season 7. We got through a lot of it, but I think it was great that we held back on these three big, chunky Day of the Doctor, the Time of the Doctor. No, hang on. We got the Name of the Doctor, the Night of the Doctor. Then we got the Day of the Doctor and the Time of the Doctor, and the Night
Time
of the
Doctor
is the little
Yep,
sort of
and the
7-8
last
minute.
day. Now,
Yeah.
You frozen. Is it me that's frozen? Which one of us is frozen?
No, it's me doing my acting. No, I'm fine. I haven't. No one's frozen. You've frozen. Don't tell me I've frozen. You've frozen. How dare you? We're all frozen. I'm here anyway. I'll just drink my wine and wait for you to come back from whatever expedition through time and space you've gone on, Rabbi. Indeed, Admiral Picard is into Star Trek. Into Star Trek. He's into archaeology. Yes. We seem to have frozen on each other's sides of things. Hey, it's the Nurtured Project. Yay! I wonder if we should start again, as we seem to have completely freezing and frozen, frozen and freezing,
Oh,
and
I froze.
frozen without a
Are you?
reason, freezing
Yeah.
without
Are
a
you?
frozen.
Yeah. So can you hear me again?
I can hear you. I definitely
Yeah.
blame
I
this.
completely. I
I think,
blame.
yeah, I blame the U.S. Air
It's
Force. I think they
second.
mistook us for a weather balloon. Sorry, am I going to get banned for
You know,
saying silly things
that's
like that?
true. I mean, it could be. It could be. So the last I remember is we were going over the specials, including the supplemental. There is the Night of the Doctor, which is just a short,
Yeah,
and I believe there was the last day, but that's just also a short. So really, we just have kind of the name, the day, then So we're going to go
and the
through
time.
those, and
Okay.
we're going to kind of discuss both our fields of discipline about how we felt about it, not only from the fact that we're both fans of Doctor Who, but of course that I'm one who looks for religious context, and of course Howard is our resident favorite archaeologist. And just so you know, you have not moved out of that spot. Like it's still you are at the top of my 3 favorite archaeologists. No one is pushing you out of the way.
It's nice to know I've got competition, but it's also nice to know I'm still on top of that pile. That's great. Thank you.
Well, you did take over River Song, and you know how I felt about River Song. She was my favorite archaeologist, and now she's like number 2. So there is that.
I'm honoured. Thank you.
Okay.
So we're going to start with the name of the Doctor.
Yes, the name of the Doctor. Let's do it. And let's see. That one. I'm trying to find my notes for this one.
Well, shall I give a little bit of an introduction so that everyone else is up to speed? So
Absolutely.
This is the kind of culmination of the reveal of who Clara Oswald is and who the Impossible Girl is in relation to the Doctor. And so we start with a sort of backstory of her trying to help and save the Doctor through time and intervening in the Doctor's timeline from the very beginning of the Doctor making the decision to steal a TARDIS from Gallifrey right the way through all of the Doctors. Girl. Yeah, so she is the way the episode is introduced, and it's the Doctor and his companions forming a kind of seance, which is an interesting element in itself, kind of Victorian, Edwardian style seance with each other to communicate, to help the Doctor to combat his enemies. But his enemy is the great intelligence in this episode, who is attempting to basically forestall the Doctor escaping his own demise, and they have to go to Trenzalore, the place which is foretold the Doctor will die, to go to the Doctor's tomb, the one place he must never go, to his own grave on Trenzalore. So you have this idea that the Doctor knows where he's going to die, or at least one incarnation of the Doctor is going to die, and he must face his own mortality, his own death, his own fate. Despite the obvious inevitability of what he feels that will end. So I thought that was really good. I like the Victorian seance type dynamic. They're communing with each other. I also like the and of course for me, I love the idea that this is a very sort of dark Gothic idea of actually visiting a cemetery, a battlefield cemetery. And so that's the one thing I wanted to discuss about this episode, is because the whole episode, the architecture, the landscape, the planet of Trenzalore is one huge battlefield graveyard, and that's the thing that really captivates me about this episode. There's very few science fiction series that we see a graveyard that is. We've seen other cemeteries in Doctor Who. We've seen cemeteries in New York with the angels. We've seen cemeteries. But for me, this is a graveyard, but like no other, because it's not only got the Doctor's grave, but it's the place where we see the graves of others, including River Song, and we also see a style and an architecture of the graves which is consistent, like a kind of mix of. It's supposed to be an alien feel, but it has a Victorian, traditional rural feel to it. It's not like a military cemetery of the First World War. It's got very sort of winged gravestones, which you do find in a lot of Scandinavian cemeteries, particularly Swedish, and that links into the Trenzalorian representation of the people of Trenzalore, very much like a rural, northern Swedish, almost, sort of aesthetic to them. And we then find that the TARDIS itself is part of the graveyard, and indeed the TARDIS is the Doctor's tomb.
Yeah.
So he dies in the very one non-human identity that is his life, his mechanism, his identity. Yes, he's got his sonic screwdriver, but he's got his TARDIS, and his time machine becomes his tomb. As its temporal dimensions and spatial dimensions bleed into each other, it becomes gargantuan. And in all those regards, I thought that's fascinating as a theme and a setting. And of course, then the other reveal is that, which just ruining the plot for everyone, is that the TARDIS is not his tomb per se, but if I remember this right, it's a tomb for his timelines, and so the TARDIS becomes, he says, where else would they bury me? But then they realise that it's not really a tomb; it's really the architecture still honouring and framing his complex timelines. Is that a fair representation, or?
I think so. And what I like is I think the TARDIS representing the tomb is interesting because it's almost like the TARDIS is the eternal companion to the Doctor here. So that when this Doctor has met his end, the TARDIS kind of shuts down and goes with him. It's almost like, I don't know if you ever have read Mercedes Lackey, but she was one of my favorite authors in my 20s. And she writes about this companionship between this race of people and their horses. Their horses are so connected to each other that when one of them passes, the other is inconsolable. And so also passes. And I feel like the use of the TARDIS as almost a tomb for him is kind of the same way. And we do know, I find it interesting also that River Song's got a tomb there, when we know River Song is like permanently kind of put inside this kind of computer. So while her body may be lying there, we also know that it's actually the entrance to this underground.
Yeah, it's a secret entrance. So is it it's left ambiguous as to whether that is just a ploy and it isn't her tomb, or it is her tomb but it's also a ploy. So I didn't fully get that, but yeah, the idea is that it's a hint as to where he should go, and River Song is there guiding them and what they should do. So I presume it's just a ploy, but there's ambiguities in that, isn't there? And I think so at one level the TARDIS is an axis mundi for all time and space and the Doctor's demise. The TARDIS is intimately connected, like a favourite horse or a favourite car or a favourite suit that one wears. That some people are afforded their favourite dress or their wedding dress, if it's applicable, or whatever. Different societies, different customs, and of course there are societies in the human past where aspirational identities are afforded to the dead. So if a girl didn't reach marriageable age, she would be buried as a bride to articulate that aspired identity. Or I've seen child's graves, tragically, where people, the parents and rather the relatives perhaps, are coming back to the grave years after the poor cretin died at the age of whatever horribly young and tragic age, and adding toys that person would never have played with to imagine a future identity of the person that died. So there's lots of ways in which past, future, present identities can collapse in on a grave.
There's also the Chinese cultural experience where they take someone who has died and then kind of marry them after death with also another person to give them a mate in the afterlife. So I do feel like this is very kind of similar to that.
Yeah.
Now, I will be honest, part of what I don't like about this is once again, the use of the companion as like the plot pusher.
Yes.
So we had this with Amy Pond, where Amy Pond was the girl who waited. And now we have Clara Oswald, the impossible girl, whose line is, "I was born to save the Doctor." And I don't necessarily enjoy the plot point that we're using companions as a way to push forward our plot or our narration of the Doctor's experience. I think that puts too much weight on the companion and rather than there being a balance. Now, obviously, the Doctor's always going to be slightly above the companion, but it almost seems like the companion there is nothing more than a widget in this experience to push the Doctor forward. And I don't completely care for that, even though I do like Clara Oswald as a companion. That kind of plot point was not my favorite use that has ever been done in Doctor Who.
I get the sense, and forgive me if this is off point, but that there's an attempt to make a supra divine intervention of fate beyond the Doctor's knowledge, beyond the Doctor's ken, that is being introduced with this idea of a River Song acting like a spiritual guide for them in their actions, and the Impossible Girl whose job is to sort of become almost like a psychopomp. She is there to not only guide the soul of the Doctor, but also to become a messenger of the gods type figure, a Mercury or a
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I want to let our listeners know that the way our platform kind of works is we will kind of go through our thought process on the specials, and then at the end of that, we take people who want to come up and ask questions or hang out with us. But we usually dedicate a good 45 minutes to the beginning of like
just
what
want to get through their ideas
really,
up. And then that's worked well.
And yes, happy Black History Month as well.
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
We are right in the middle of it, and especially I think coming into this next season, we'll be able to talk a lot about how that affects and interacts with Doctor Who personally, especially when
we've had Black Companions for the first time with Martha, and now we're going to be moving into a second Black Companion, and then we're going to have a Black Doctor coming up in the future.
I love it. I'm here for it. I'm completely here
that's not the only reasons and things. There's lots of other Black characters within the last couple of shows, and we've been quite critical of the way they've been cast. Actually, and I think we've got better ones coming up. Well, we think
the way that
casting,
they've been treated. Absolutely. So for me, this episode, the culmination of this episode is, of course, her realization of what she's going to do and jumping into the Doctor's time stream. That particular imagery, and then seeing the montage of her going through every Doctor, basically being the one saying, no, not that TARDIS, you want that one. And seeing all of these images of all previous Doctors where she's been like, no, get out of the Doctor. I did enjoy that part of this episode. And of course, it must be said that the Doctor did try to sacrifice himself by jumping into his own time stream. So to me, that does show how much he cares for Clara, maybe not in the romantic sense, but he does absolutely love Clara and wants to protect her. And then we get into this almost like pocket universe. That's what I see it as. They jump into his time stream and they end up in this almost, to me, what looks like a pocket universe. And in this pocket universe, we see the best reveal ever, my personal opinion. You just see John Hurt turn around, and it just says, and introducing, and I'm like, I don't care how many times I've watched it, that moment where you just see him is still, I get tingles. I still am like, and just the line that Matt Smith's Doctor said, he's the one who didn't keep the promise. I'm just like, what's happening?
This gets into how names, we have lots of different plays and allusions to how the Doctor gets his name, how the Doctor's name. We've already been introduced to the idea the Doctor's name becomes a curse, that Doctors become warriors in the popular imagination of many thousands of races and peoples, and because of the Doctor's actions, and then he tries to write himself out of history. So here we are, where the Doctor says, a name is a promise, he's the one that broke the promise. We give ourselves our name. And I think that was really, really powerful, and this idea that he is living up to his own pledge by taking on the name, and that makes us reflect on many societies and religious communities where whether you're born with it, your name, your identity, your gender, your status is something that is acquired through a conversion or an initiation into a pledge to live your life in a particular way. And we see that in Christian communities, with monastic communities taking on new names. We see this with everything from popes to priests. We see it also in other communities too, and this can this is almost like that. Is that fair? Is that pushing it? I don't know. Is there
I
a
think so. No,
parallel?
I think that would be exactly how I would explain it too. I mean, if we think about it, when in Catholic society, when someone becomes a priest, when they become a nun, they take on a name that they have chosen to represent who they wish to emulate in the world. The Pope Francis, that's not his name. He took that because of the Saint Francis of Assisi. He wanted to emulate that man's vision and the way that he was portrayed in the world. So he took that name. So I don't think it's a stretch to say that this community, this race of people, the Gallifreyans, say we're going to choose our own name as a way to say who we are. I mean, we also see it in native communities. You're given a name later on depending on who you are, what your personality is, what you plan to bring into the world. Judaism is the same way. When we have converts come in, they choose a Hebrew name, and they choose the name based on what they want to portray in the world. Like my middle name is not a good example is I was born with an English name and a Hebrew name. My Hebrew name being Hannah Shifra. But that was not my original Hebrew name. My original Hebrew name was Hannah Tirza. When I grew up, I chose the name Shifra as my middle name instead because she was a midwife in Egypt who saved the children of Israel. And I admired how she was strong and how she was able to stand up against Pharaoh and say, no, the Hebrew women have the babies before we get there, as a way to save these children. So I took that name because those were the qualities I wanted to emulate. So I don't think it's a stretch to believe that Gallifreyans are the same. And so to have a representation of himself that broke those promises, I love that. That is a part of the Doctor Who mythology that I love.
And it also brings, I mean, I have to say, Alistair's made the point here that monarchs also choose their names. I was hoping that we wouldn't have a King Charles III, given how disastrously King Charles I and II went. I think it's almost, it's hardly a surprise that I think that he's dug his own.
Mm-hmm. Uh-oh. It looks like we have a little bit of freezing again. I don't know if it's me.
Just joking. Mm-hmm. But seriously, but then it also problematises, getting back to Doctor Who, it problematises the idea of, is the Doctor a mantle? Is the regeneration really just a change in the same person? Or is it a new person who's taking on that identity? And obviously we're supposed to believe it's the same person who's going through a biochemical transformation to regenerate his cells, getting new kidneys, getting new... But his memories, the memory is the anchor that links him between his different incarnations. And this idea of reincarnation. Is it the same person, or is it a different person with the same name? And, it's not...
So
different ways of looking at it.
This kind of, and I'm going to kind of cross genre here, still in sci-fi, but if we go over to Star Trek and look at Trill, where Trill is the, is the one who has all these memories, but then the Trill moves on to the next incarnation, and when they do, they bring those memories of the, like Jadzia, when she meets up with a friend who is like, Curzon, it says, hey, Curzon Dax, and she's like, I'm Jadzia now. She still has the memories of Curzon and every Dax, because the Dax is there, but she also brings her own new personality in. So,
and of course, this links into broader.
It's very similar to me.
Is that people do generally, you do it in an honorific way. Oh, he looks a bit like my granddad. Oh no, he doesn't. He looks a bit like his great uncle. But we also have the idea of biological inheritance of personality traits, of appearances, and people. The surname, it's not the same thing. But I'm just saying it's part of the way we play different levels of severity of this dynamic of what is a what is an identity, what is transferred between persons that look different and act different. And we have many societies will name a new child after a just dead relative, or will rest a name for a generation, or different dynamics of how naming practices occur in relation to.
Exactly.
I got deliberately non-ancestral name because no one in my family has ever been called Howard before, but I got a middle name.
I love your name. Just so that we throw it out there, I think Howard is a quite lovely name. I think it's sparkling. That's just personally me.
For it all my life, so it's nice to hear.
And I personally will punch anyone who calls you Howie. I will literally come through the screen and harm them because you are not Howie. So those are the points for me, religiously speaking, for this episode. The way that the whole planet, like you mentioned in the beginning here, seems like a war zone as well as a cemetery is so interesting to me. And the way that the TARDIS grows, it like becomes this ginormous tomb. And I know they talk about it's because she's dying, and because of that she's no longer bigger on the inside. She's bigger all over because she no longer has those perception. I'm missing the word, but I'm sure all of our lovely viewers know what I mean. She no longer has the perception on to allow it to look like she's bigger on the inside. She's just kind of gone into. Yes, there it is. Perception filter. Thank you. And I love that. I love this entire setup. And like I said, I absolutely adore that who they got to come in as the war doctor. I literally just lost my, every time. I'm just like, oh my goodness. It's just such a beautiful, beautiful, I don't know. I would watch him do anything. Like I just love him as an actor. So the fact that they got him just was amusing too, and I loved it. So I have to ask, do you have any other critiques about this particular episode, or would you like to go on to the short, which is kind of like explaining how he became the war doctor?
I think it's really an interesting religious dimension of that Karn, the Sisterhood of Karn, almost like a waiting for the Doctor to break his promise and facilitate his self-regeneration into the War Doctor to end the Time War. And it's not, we don't get much details about that, unless the Sisterhood of Karn were in an earlier episode. Probably Doctor Who nerds will know, but I can't remember.
I don't remember them. I think they've been mentioned in passing, but I don't remember. I would have to go back to old Who and look. I don't think they've been mentioned in new Who. Let me just say that.
It's certainly an interesting. Yeah, go on.
We did watch the short together. The short was The Night of the Doctor, and it was only like a 6-minute. So it doesn't give you too much information. It does just show Sylvester McCoy kind of turning into, and then it's the next episode or the next special. Is that correct? Is it Paul McGann? Why did I say Sylvester McCoy? How do I get those? They look nothing alike. Yeah, Paul McGann turning into. And then it's the next. No, please do. Are you kidding? You're a professor. I'm happy to be corrected.
You've got the TARDIS behind you. That trumps any.
No, not at all. Like I said, it's literally just to completely block out the garbage, because my garage is also bigger on the inside but filled with junk. Oh yes, somebody mentioned David Tennant does mention the Sisterhood of Karn with the Ood, so there is a mention of it there in new.
Yes,
Ood. That's correct.
Oh right, okay, I totally forgot that. Yeah.
Oh, you are very sweet to me. Thank you very much. Yeah, I cannot believe I missed them. So I do know that it's the night of, or the day of the Doctor, that now we have the paintings, this 3-dimensional painting that's going on. Is that where we're at now?
Yeah. I mean, so the day of the Doctor episode is very much about the I mean, the overall plot is basically the Zygons take over the Earth from the past by lying in wait, and it very much focuses on that. We get 2 doctors back. We get oh god,
David Tennant.
We have Tennant and joins in, and it's back to the 16th century, back to young days, QE1 as I call her, Queen Elizabeth I, and the archaeological elements of this episode I can quickly rattle through. The thing, there's lots of there's filming locations. So we've got Chepstow Castle on the very border of Wales with England, across the Wye, the dramatic setting, Chepstow Castle. We've got the Tower of London as the headquarters of UNIT, and they're with the comedy element that it's being guarded by electronic ravens, and the comment made they need new batteries because they look sluggish. It lands in Trafalgar Square, so you've got another classic London patriotic landmark, patriotic and public art landmark. And of course it focuses on, because Trafalgar Square is where the Tate is, and you have then the link to the idea of the under gallery, where the created by Queen Elizabeth I to be the sort of custodian place of all the special treasures of the crown. And in this under gallery lies beneath the Tower of London, I should say, and that's important, lies not only various curios and relics from outer space, including a Cyberman helmet, but includes this painting which has 2 names, which is No More and Gallifrey Falls. And so the story is not particularly interesting. I don't particularly like the story of this episode, but it's where it leads us to is just wonderfully. It's almost like the whole plot and the Zygons are a sort of sideshow to get us to a point where you have this concept of the War Doctor is about to destroy the world, destroy Gallifrey, destroy the time itself. I don't know if that's the right way of putting it, but all the different reincarnations of the Doctor combine forces to seal Gallifrey in a pocket universe from the final Dalek attack. And the undergallery and the painting, because the Time Lords create 3-dimensional art, is the actual pocket universe. And so being curated in this gallery as a treasure is the entire Time Lord race and Gallifrey frozen at the moment before its destruction. I hope I'm remembering and characterising this appropriately.
Yes,
I'm sure
no, that's
Doctor
exactly
Who nerds will be able to correct me. But the point is, this is a really interesting from an archaeological perspective, because this idea of valued treasures and curated, collections, which comes back again and again in Doctor Who. The idea that the Doctor is a detective, he's an adventurer, he's a meddler in time, he is a disruptor, he claims to hate archaeologists, but he's always in libraries, he's always protecting the fabric of the universe, he's a custodian, he is a curator. He is, well, yeah. So he's a curator. He is almost like, at one level, he is not an archaeologist because he's too busy in an old dilettante antiquarian style valuing of old objects. And so the end of the episode, of course, is when he sits down looking at Gallifrey Falls at the very end, and he sort of comes and says, I could do this. I could be the great curator. And he sort of almost comes to this idea suddenly that rather than just zooming around the universe, protecting Earth, protecting different time streams, he could actually become, in later years, he could settle down to become what he already is, really, what he already has become. He is a curator of time. He's a curator of his own people. So, and that's a very old-fashioned characterization of what a curator is and what museums are, which many heritage and museological experts would say is old-fashioned 19th century, but the Doctor is 19th century. The Doctor is Victorian or Edwardian. He is very much British. He is imperial. He is about gathering and keeping and storing treasures. And he's not exactly a looter. He is a protector, but he is in that old tradition. And so for me, that bit is just like coming full circle of what the Doctor has always. He may dally and pretend to be an adventurer, he may pretend to be a warrior, he may pretend to be a healer, but at the end of the day, he is really a curator. Anyway,
and
that's
I will for me this first of all I will say when you say Doctor Who nerds will correct you, you are in fact a Doctor Who nerd, and the
well,
sooner you get right with that, the
Doctor
better
Who
your better
nerd
your life
light.
will
I would
be.
like to see nerd light.
I love this episode because, like somebody said in the comments, every multi-doctor episode tends to be slightly more contrived than the usual episode. Absolutely, I agree with her completely, because you have these doctors meeting up in their own time stream. We have the showdown, almost the Matt Smith kind of looking over David Tennant. They're giving each other the body check. They're having the little bits of back and forth about whose sonic screwdriver is bigger, better, compensating for something, that sort of dialogue. And then we have the war doctor who's just like, this is all I've ever needed, and the moment the three of them are in the tower together and coming to understand that if they started the calculations, then 400 years later they would have them done, just because they're all standing in the same room together. It takes all three of them to kind of do this, and I find that interesting. I love the dynamic that plays out between the three of them. I love the way that we find out, one, that David Tennant's doctor did marry Queen Elizabeth, which, as another one of our listeners mentioned, is a reason why we know now later on why she wanted him executed during the Shakespearean episode. Kind of gives us a little bit of understanding.
Yes,
and
sure.
I love the moment where they're trying to explain to the Gallifreyan Council, this is the only way we can save you. We're going to push you into this pocket universe, and you have to have faith. So for me, that's where the religion comes in. We're going to save you, but you have to have faith that even though I'm kind of like the ostracized child, I'm right now going to be like the prodigal son, come back to try and fix what I harmed in the first place. Because we know it's the war doctor who blew up Gallifrey in the first place during the Time War. We know that's why he's been, exiled into the annals of no one try to remember. But now he's like, I'm going to do tshuva. If you're a Jew, tshuva is I'm going to return to a better person than I was once before. I'm going to fix my wrongs, and I'm going to be better. And this is, to me, a great example of the doctor performing tshuva. He comes and says, I know I'm the one who did this. I'm now going to fix it. And the moment you see all of them, and I love the way they cut these pieces from old Who and new Who, so you see all of these TARDISes just like circling around, and each one of them saying their thing, Alonzi and, Geronimo. And
it's a lovely nostalgia retro comfort episode.
It is.
Kay was saying in the
and
comments
it's
here.
The first glimpse we get of Peter Capaldi, because you see the general say,
his
the
eyes.
one guy says, oh, all 12, and he says, no, all 13, and you see just the eyes of Peter Capaldi, and you're like, and I love the fact that the War Doctor's idea, his like Alonzi is Gallifrey stands. And how when Tom Baker comes in as the curator later, says that some people believe that this means Gallifrey falls no more.
Yeah.
And it is such a hopeful note that the eventuality is that they will find a solution to take Gallifrey out of this pocket universe and be able to bring people forward, and no longer have them frozen in this moment of time.
And the
that
rabbi
maybe
doesn't
he won't
know,
be a lonely
because
traveler.
the rabbi hasn't watched them yet, but I can give a
Nope.
taster that, of course, then we get the Start Illusions in Series 8 about the long way round, and this comes in about how does the Doctor get back to Gallifrey, the long way round. And one of my favourite episodes ever is coming up, which we haven't discussed yet, and we haven't seen yet together, is about how does he get to
excited.
Gallifrey the long way round. Yeah.
I
you
also
should be.
would like to
it's
say
really, truly excellent.
We are introduced to a character named Osgood as well, and I love this. Yes. Osgood, every episode that Osgood is in, she wears a piece of clothing from one of the older Doctors. This first one is...
She's like the fan, the science fan.
She is. Now, what I love about her is the fact that her scarf, and here's a little bit of textile nerddom for you in terms of nerddom. Her scarf, while it is a play on Tom Baker's scarf, actually is in a different pattern altogether than Tom Baker's. And I, intimately, I know every one of Tom Baker's scarves, but Osgood's is a little bit different, a little bit shorter, and has a little bit different patterning to it than any of the other seasons, because they wanted it to be a send-off, but not a direct replica. The same as when she wears, Sylvester McCoy was the one with the question marks, yes?
Yeah.
Yes. She actually does wear his sweater in a future episode. I've seen pictures of. I haven't seen it. And in the sweater, it's a little off as well, just to be nostalgic, but without being a full representation. That's my textile nerdom for you.
She's also an asthmatic, as I am, so I have a lot of sympathy for her in that regard.
And the way they use the Zygon, to say, and how she just hands, we now know who Osgood is and who the Zygon is, because based on who was holding the asthma inhaler.
Yeah.
But the fact that she was willing just to say, well, now you're stuck in this body, so we're in it together. That shows me just how good she is.
So I don't have anything else to say. That there's the idea of galleries, curation. There's the Tower of London. It all fits into that very wholesome British, nationhood and treasures narrative, which is very comforting, but obviously overtly nationalistic. It's one of the most overtly nationalistic episodes amongst many that have, shall we say, for international audiences, even for British audiences, British patriotism is overplayed in a whole host of other episodes. But that one is one of the most. This one works in less painfully, but it's still there, I would say.
Now, when we go into the time of the Doctor, no, I agree with you. I think that.
I'm sorry, I don't know if that's obvious.
No.
American.
No, and I think that there's a lot of American television that does the same thing. It really leans itself into nationalism and patriotism.
Well, the White
in
House
a way
under threat. Everything's about the White House under threat, isn't it? It's equivalent. It's like Independence Day. Every film is like, Mr. President. What? And it's the same
Air
thing.
Force One.
Yeah.
Get off my plane.
Yeah, exactly. But it's okay once in a while. But if it's like every episode, it's like and I think Doctor Who does overplay that a little bit sometimes, but yeah, that's all I had to say on that one. Then we go on to the last episode we're going to discuss, which is the Time of the Doctor.
The Time of the Doctor is interesting for me because I love that this entire place is called Christmas. Now, as a Jew, I'm not supposed to like Christmas. I will say that while I do not celebrate Christmas, I have always been enamored with the trees and the fact that my father loved Christmas. So my dad was somebody who liked Christmas, and that is something that I honor about him, even though I don't celebrate Christmas. But seeing this entire town called Christmas on the planet of Trenzalore. So we're on the planet of Trenzalore, and that in the middle of all of that, there's this little tiny kind of throwback to, it looks almost Pennsylvania Dutch in nature, if you were to ask me, being I'm so glad you stayed with us.
Oh yes, thank you, Kate.
If you were looking for from an American perspective, it looks very Pennsylvania Dutch type town, almost Amish.
I said earlier, I thought it was more Swedish, but maybe I just didn't.
Well, that's
Finnish.
For us. It's kind of the same, almost costuming.
Yeah, it's traditional European get-up, isn't it? In some mashup of different regional Northern European.
And we see that he's talking to himself almost in the form of talking to this Cyberman's head. He just has this head that he keeps speaking to inside the TARDIS, and then decides to stay so that he can protect Trenzalore and specifically this town against these Denzians of attacks from all manner of foe, not just everybody's come for him.
I must admit, I lost the plot of this one. So I've watched it many times. I still struggle to understand what the heck is going on. But the Silence, the Church of the whatever Silence, become his friends and his allies. against the Daleks. I love the bit. There's lots of individual clever ideas packed into this episode. I don't think the episode works at all, but I like the idea that the Cybermen are trying to adapt and even send wooden Cybermen to get around.
Wooden Cybermen, I do like that.
Get around the sort of the dampening field of scientific tech that is being set up to stop.
What gets me about this is that we don't realize until later, and while we're not discussing Peter Capaldi, we don't realize until later that how long he stayed there. Because when he came to Trenzalore, he's 900 and some odd years old. And then later on, here is the doctor talking about how he's 2,000 years old. And I'm like, how long did you stay on this planet? So I find that interesting.
Yeah, that's really important.
But like you, they use a lot to try to navigate the idea of rewriting this Who mythology. Because we know in older Who mythology, he only gets 12 reincarnations. That's it. And he says that to Clara. This is it. That's why he's growing older. He's there, getting older, and he's going to die right there on Trenzalore. But we know that crack in the universe, she goes and almost prays to me. That is almost a prayer to the wider universe. Think of all the ways that he's come through and helped. Won't you help him? And suddenly this regeneration energy hits him. And I think it was
Gallifrey,
their way of... Yes.
Is that the idea?
I think it is. It's supposed to...
If Gallifrey's out there, send him some extra...
Somewhere.
Somewhere.
And so for me, that was their way of trying to get around the mythos that his 12 generations were finite. Yeah. Now, we don't know how many more regens he's going to have.
Well, we do now, because that's something else you don't know, because there's another whole reworking of it. So let's just say not everyone's happy with that, but there's another layer of rewriting of the whole story now. So, but
that happens a lot with our sci-fi. I find that this episode also, like you, I'm trying to figure out what they're doing to try and make this work. If the end goal was just to say, okay, we're going to introduce the new Doctor and we're going to rewrite the mythology a bit, it seemed a little contrived to me. It did not have... I mean, we come from the Day of the Doctor, which was an amazing episode in my opinion. And then this one kind of lets me down a little bit, if I'm being realistic.
The whole point is they're trying to pack in too many apocalyptic, dramatic episodes. One other thing I like about it, though, is this place called Christmas where no one can lie, which I don't think the reality of that... Yeah, that's the idea that the Doctor has to say his name and speak the truth. That all stuff aside, what I like about it is the back to rurality, the nostalgia for Christmas linked to the nostalgia for a place that is without tech, without science, where and what's interesting is that a graveyard does feature quite prominently in this space. Obviously we see it later on when Trenzalore becomes a whole graveyard with the TARDIS as part of it, but we see it with a small graveyard. And the other point I wanted to say was the way that the bell tower is the site of where his regeneration begins. So he's almost in a religious space at the top of a bell tower, communing with, because remember, bell towers are features of medieval architecture and post-medieval church architecture, intended to be for calling to prayer, but they're also intended to be intercessory points with the heavens. And so he goes to the top of this bell tower and zaps out his regeneration juice and zaps all the Daleks and all this stuff. So it's almost like a religious, evocation. He's drawing the power of Gallifrey, almost like he's drawing the power of the heavens to then zap back against his enemies. And that's very religious, I thought. And then,
but yet we see him become young again, but then still we go through where his outsides, of course, don't matter, because he's like, I'm still tired. I'm done. It's going to be somebody else.
And that's really interesting, because this is another version, a less dramatic regeneration, but it's still a powerful one. And he does his goodbye reflecting on, we're all different people and we're all going to be different, which is very sort of sentimental, but, in touching, articulation of change of the inevitability of change? Is he saying it because he's actually, you're left in unsure whether he's saying this because he's actually trying to philosophize, or is he saying it because he's trying to comfort Clara about what's going to happen and his change? Does he want to make her aware? We're always changing. It's like saying something, it's like saying it's just another journey. It's just not, death is just another step on the road. It's just another another sleep. Another day will come. It's another metaphor to try and comfort the survivors. Is that what he's doing? And then, of course, he has a vision himself of Amy coming back and saying good night.
Oh.
So good night and sleep and is a farewell that she affords to him in some kind of spiritual, visionary form. So there's lots of things going on there, and I think they try and mess. Yeah. Anyway, that's my.
I think that this is the first time we don't see a violent regen. Those are things that you and I have talked about before. That David Tennant turning into Matt Smith was violent, so much so that it completely tears apart the inside of the TARDIS. We have number 9 going into number 10 is violent, and now we just have this immediate, he just kind of hope, and there we have now Peter Capaldi in our midst. And him trying to determine, now without going into the series, the first episode really does revolve around, with Peter Capaldi, him finding out what kind of man he is.
And not knowing who exactly everyone else is.
Who he is. My favorite scene, honestly, is him talking about his attack eyebrows. I'm not going to lie to you. They look like they're trying to annex from my entire face and start their own country. And he's a much more serious reincarnation. And, we have Clara Oswald, who was used to being with Matt Smith's kind of funner, lighthearted. While he could be serious, he was kind of zany almost. And now we have Peter Capaldi and him talking about, why did I choose this face? Well, we know that the same actor, Peter Capaldi, played in The Fires of Pompeii.
Yeah.
And so I find it interesting that they kind of do a throwback, a callback, as it were, to why did I choose this face? And I'm not going to go past there. I just it's an interesting dynamic when the Doctor is trying to figure out who he is, or she is, as we know later on, in their new form. It almost like we were talking about earlier, they still kind of carry the memories of their past selves, but they're almost brand new people. New ambitions and new thoughts. And we know kind of going forward that he's not as lovable, not as comforting as past regenerations has been. So
all I can say is
say that they are a brand new person who just happens to bring the experience of the last regenerations with them, but are completely new human, or new Gallifreyans, new humans?
I don't have an answer, and I think they don't give us an answer because they keep playing with different versions of it, don't they, down the episodes. All I would say was that in many ways this is the end of the most epic and classic of the revised series, and yet in some ways I'm relieved because, as I've said before, I think this egotistical self-obsession with the Doctor's identity, while it doesn't go away, they do tone it down, and the plots aren't as good moving forward, but at least we don't have to have so much self reflection on the Doctor as much, and I think that's really
I enjoy that he's an older regen, that we're not dealing with the chiseled hunks that we had from 9 to 11.
And he's really funny in the next series, as we shall see. He's got some great one-liners, and jealousies, and anger comes out about his attitude towards soldiers, and I was going to say Billy. His name's not Billy. His name's Danny. Danny. Yeah, and so there's a lot to look forward to for the next series, and for our discussions whenever we get through the next series. We're about over halfway, aren't we, already? I think
we are. We're doing pretty good.
Yeah. And Capaldi rocks as an actor, as a comedic actor, he's versatile. I think he's better than Matt Smith. I think he's better than Tennant, actually, in my view. I just don't think the plots are as good. But sorry, I think Capaldi's better. I think it's the best Doctor we've had. But I just think the plots aren't there and the writing isn't there. But there are individual episodes that are classic with Capaldi. But I think overall it's frustrating.
Could we say that you like Capaldi because you kind of identified with cranky,
how dare you suggest
older.
How dare you say I'm old? Okay.
Older
yes.
people.
I think I'm more of a in the thick of it than a Doctor Who Capaldi. I'm more of a, there's a lot of inner swearing going on every minute, especially at work. But I don't obviously swear all the time. But in my head,
in your head, you're sweary. I'm sweary all the time. I just behave myself on live.
I have to circle back though, because I remember, and somebody in here, there's Alistair again, was saying Patterson Joseph. Patterson Joseph. I don't know. I wasn't following all of the discussions about it, but I would have loved Patterson Joseph to have been a Doctor Who. Patterson Joseph may not be known to you, but he is a great comedy actor, and he would have been the first Black Doctor. And it was just, regardless of skin tone he would have been brilliant. Although I could almost imagine him having almost like Johnson out of Peep Show, who's a comedy character he plays in the Peep Show, moments of him as the Doctor. But no, he would have been brilliant, and maybe there's still time for him. He's in his, maybe in 10 years' time we'll have a Patterson Joseph Doctor, an older Black Doctor.
I would love it.
Great.
I like that we're getting our first, our second, technically. I know that there was a woman, a Black woman, who is some incarnation of the Doctor that I don't know about. I haven't seen it, but I understand that happens.
Yeah.
No,
so we're getting that, and then we're getting, So I think that's going to be an important step, I think, for the Doctor and the character of the Doctor. But equally, someone asked earlier, will there be an Asian Doctor? There's so many good Asian actors. So. I could see some really good British Asian. I think, no offence, I just don't want to see an American Doctor. I mean, I just think it would be shit.
Didn't we have one? Isn't Peter McGann? No, I was thinking of Eric Roberts, who played the Master.
Oh yeah. I don't mind that so much as I just don't. I like it. It's a British show. I don't. It sounds really jingoistic.
No,
I really think it should be. I think I think it has that aesthetic, and it should be. Lots of Americans appear in it. He's had American assistants. There's American characters throughout. You can pack the show with Americans to appeal to American audience. I don't care. I just think you have to keep the Doctor with some kind of, dare I say, these islands accent. Irish, I don't care. Good, that's good. Doesn't have to be British. It can be Irish.
But I agree with you. I absolutely agree that we don't really need an American Doctor Who. Like, I believe, honestly, and here is my interesting take. There was a show here on the WB or
Sanjeev
CW
Bhaskar.
called...
Sorry, I'm interrupting. Sanjeev Bhaskar as the Doctor would be fantastic. Sorry, go on. Sorry, Rabbi.
No, that's okay. We had what I consider a Americanized version of Doctor Who, which was Legends of Tomorrow, that was on here in the United States. And in fact, Arthur Darvill played the main kind of character in there, and it was really about them trying to go through and fix time. And I was like, so this is really an Americanized Doctor Who. And I don't think we needed that. I mean, it was a good show and I enjoyed it. But when I really was like, oh, Arthur Darvill, I'm only going to watch it because of my love of Arthur Darvill in the first place. And I really enjoyed it. But about 3 episodes in, I was like, oh, so this is basically an ensemble cast who is doing basically Doctor Who-esque type scenarios. And I agree with you. I don't think that I think one of the things that makes Doctor Who so brilliant is that the Doctor is British, and it isn't constantly about saving the United States. It's literally, and Cardiff, and we talk about, and a lot of Wales. Even though he's talking about Britain, we know it's mostly all filmed in Wales. The spin-off Torchwood is all filmed in Wales. In fact, their base is in Wales. There's been a few spin-offs from the Doctor that I have enjoyed. Class is the new one. It went 1 season. I haven't watched it. I loved the Sarah Jane Smith Chronicles. Unfortunately, when she passed,
any of that, I'm afraid.
Oh, well, when she passed, unfortunately, they had to, that stopped. But it was a half-hour show about her and her son and K9 and kind of doing their own thing. I love that dog.
Affirmative.
I still say he's up there in my top 5 companions.
You're
is
a bad
Canine.
dog. Affirmative.
And I agree with Mickey that he was worse than the dog. Mickey was basically the dog. The way they treated that character.
Would you should we? I mean, we've really wrapped up this discussion quite quickly. Do you want? Is there any questions or anything you would like to ask?
Yes, I know. Well, you answered a couple of them. I saw the one about do I think there was going to be an Asian doctor, and I agree. I think there should be. I'm kind of going through and seeing if I missed any questions. The roots of the show are didactic. It was yes, it was. That's true. Devil Tiger talks about how it was originally contrived to teach children, and that's true. When we go back to the original Who, season 1, it was. That's why he and his granddaughter were traveling through time. It was a way to teach children history, and then his kind of slowly evolved into the Who that we know today. I'm trying to see.
I've another character I'd love to see play Doctor, and I'm sure people have already discussed this, but I haven't thought about it before now. Is Millie Bobby Brown? I think she'd be fantastic as a Doctor Who. Maybe in a few years, you know.
She's great as a Holmes. I'll say that. Like if I like her as Enola Holmes, so I could see her playing a version of the Doctor.
Yeah, she's witty, she's versatile, she's funny. You know, she's both witty as in quips, but also, you know, funny as in stunts and dynamics, and I think that there's a lot you could do with that.
We have 2 questions. What do we think of Richard Coyle?
I don't know enough about which one's Richard Coyle. I'm going to look him up because I can't remember.
And how do we feel about House? I actually think he would be an interesting Doctor, only because he is. I haven't seen anything with Richard Coyle in. Sorry, I'm useless.
I don't remember.
Hugh Laurie is an amazing actor, in my opinion. He's hilarious. Fry and Laurie was hilarious.
Both of them.
So I think that even though he played this very serious Sherlock version in House, because that's what House was. It was basically Sherlock Holmes except medical. Even down to the apartment he lived in. He lived in at 221 Baker, at 221 B Street. I think Hugh Laurie would make a very acerbic Doctor, and I think that would be an interesting take on the Doctor. And he was great in Blackadder. I'll be honest, Blackadder is probably one of my most favorite British shows ever. I love Blackadder. I do like Red Dwarf. I know that I'm hopelessly American, but that I do enjoy me some British TV. Blackadder was one of my favorites. Red Dwarf.
Permission to say hurrah in an annoyingly loud voice.
Show. Yes, his ability to drop his British accent for House Hugh Laurie was amazing. I'm starting to watch Peep Show, and Are You Being Served? I don't know if that's a show you ever watched.
How can you watch that?
I love that show.
Painfully
it was
dated.
Hilarious. I thought it was hilarious. Did you? But you never watched Upstairs, Downstairs, right?
No, I didn't. Faulty Towers, though.
And you didn't watch Downton Abbey because you don't like posh people.
I don't like posh people. I'm not exactly a rabid socialist, but I can't stand the valorization of posh people farting around posh houses. It gets right under my skin. It gets right up my nose. It gets my dander right up. Everything gets right up, and it gets right up on me. I can't stand it. I can't stand this. Yes, it's kind of funny watching women in the 18th century fart around trying to marry or not marry, but after a while, 5 minutes of Jane Austen's as much as I can cope with. Thank you very much.
My heart.
I'm sorry. I'm just a complete nihilist. I can't take it. I can't take any more of it. I've watched it once. I've watched a couple of renditions. I've read a couple of the books, and I'm bored out of my tiny mind with it all. I don't want that. I want if there's not Daleks slaying them all, then if there was a Downton Abbey Dalek slay moment, I think that would be the kind of thing I would tune in for, or a Upstairs Downstairs meets the Cybermen or something. I could just about cope with that.
Well, how would you feel about? I think you would like then Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies. Because they're all fighting the zombie.
Yes, but I'm dead. With Andrew Lincoln doing that sort of attempt at a southern accent, going, we're all family now. We've got to try and stay alive, and this kind of Carl, do this kind of thing. It'd be good, whilst no, I don't know. I think actually there's so many crossovers you could do, with all these genres. But I think
I'm trying to think if there are any other like English, British actors that I would love to see play the Doctor, or even come in as a companion. I would love to see Idris Elba, but I'll watch Idris Elba play anything. I actually think he's probably too good to play the Doctor, but he would bring a very interesting gravitas to the idea of the Doctor.
Tom Hopper, actually, he's already been in Doctor Who. He was in the episode. He was the pretty boy. They called it. The Doctor called him the pretty boy in the first Matt Smith episode with. And he's in Black Sails. He's in the Umbrella Academy, which you haven't watched. The Umbrella Academy.
No, I have not. And I haven't watched Black Sails either, but I need to.
Black Sails is phenomenal. It's ridiculous. It's like it's Treasure Island prequel with extra nudity and violence, and it's
well, I'm in.
Ridiculous.
You just said it, extra nudity and violence. I can't turn that down.
I mean, so the Tom Hopper is like a meathead in the Umbrella Academy. He's like the big muscle man superhero brother, but he would be good in a Doctor Who role, maybe in a few years' time. Actually as an assistant, as a sort of bit of a slightly dim and confused assistant. But another British.
What do we think of Patrick Stewart? Somebody mentioned Patrick Stewart is awesome as a British actor.
He is,
but probably not as the Doctor.
Right.
You think
same with Ian McKellen.
He's
the voice of the Great Intelligence. But I think Ian McKellen is a missed opportunity, but he's probably a bit too old now as well. But if Ian McKellen did it, he should have played it proper camp McKellen, not I'm going to try and be a straight Gandalf. I want a bit more. I want a bit more camp. I want a bit more.
I want to see a queer Doctor. So far, we've only seen Doctor have these kind of straight presenting relationships. While we have Jack, who will pretty much bet anything, we've never really seen the Doctor kind of explore that sort of relationship in a queer dynamic, and I would love that. Unfortunately, Brent Spiner is American, and I'm not sure that I would. I'm with the professor here.
No, I'm changing my mind. Brent Spiner could do it.
I'm
changing my mind. Brent Spiner could pull it off. He could pull it off.
I would love to see the Doctor as trans or in drag.
Yeah.
I would love it interesting, even if it was just an episode or a couple of episodes where the Doctor has that sort of crisis about the regen that they were given, and do they identify wholly with that? That would be an interesting. Eddie Izzard.
Eddie Izzard would be a fantastic Doctor Who, actually.
Would be fantastic. I love Eddie Izzard anyway. I don't know if I've told you this, but I kind of worship at Eddie Izzard's feet. I always have. When I was younger, I would watch Eddie's stand-up, and the way that she would do her jokes in English and then in French, and my partner at the time understood French, right? So the funny part is he would laugh at all the French jokes and kind of make fun of me a little because I didn't understand French, and I got him back by watching George Lopez, because I understood the Spanish jokes because I'm Mexican. So watching George Lopez speak in Spanish, and my partner going, "Why is that funny?" And I'm like, "It would be funny if you understood Spanish." But I always loved Eddie Izzard. So you mean all of my choices are or death? Well, we didn't expect this many turnout. You can't have cake or death if we ran out of cake. And then how he makes fun of Americans. She makes fun of Americans by saying, here comes the cavalry. Why weren't you here already? Well, we had to have breakfast. And I'm like, that sounds so very American. She just takes the mickey out of all Americans, and I always love that. What do you think about having an Australian?
Can I stick with British actors? I think Julian Rhind-Tutt or Stephen Mangan, both of who were in Green Wing, because of course Michelle Gomez was in Green Wing. I think if Stephen Mangan as Doctor Who would be quite good and funny for a short run. A very sweary Doctor Who. He's very rude and obnoxious. Or a Julian Rhind-Tutt. And I don't know if you know Julian Rhind-Tutt, but Julian Rhind-Tutt is a comedy actor. He plays lots of small roles. He was in, for example, The Witcher season 1 as the person who does just a small role, and he's in so much, Julian Reintutt, that he would be good.
I would have loved Maggie Smith when she was a bit younger. I do think that she's now a little bit older, too old for the role.
I think they need to keep away from people who've appeared in Harry Potter, though.
John Leguizamo would be an interesting, if we chose an American. I think Leguizamo would be interesting as the Doctor. And I would love to see someone, I'm very happy to see that we're moving away from white cis males into women, and now we're going to have a black Doctor. I'm very excited. I got to see the outfit. I don't know if you've seen, they previewed what he'll be wearing as the Doctor, and I'm here for it. I would love to see somebody who is like me, who is brown or something like that. And it doesn't mean that I'm like, hey, I'm trying to create this DEI culture in Doctor Who, but representation does matter. I know that we have a lesbian companion coming up later on with Peter Capaldi.
That's really
I'm very
interesting.
excited about that.
I'd love to see what you think about that. I think that's going to be a whole point of separate discussion beyond our more religious death memory angles, because the way that her arc develops is both interesting and frustrating, and I can't. It'd be interesting to see what your take on.
Yeah, my children have, of course, they've seen all of it through Jodie Whittaker, and they have asked me. They try to make sure that they aren't spoiling it for me. So they've asked me, "Have you seen the new companion? Are you at Billy yet?" And I'm like, "No, I'm still with Clara." And all my son will say to me is, "They did Clara dirty. That's all he'll say." And I'm like, "Well, what happened?" He's like, "No, I'm not telling you. Just be prepared."
That's one of those American phrases that you have to hesitate and think, what does that mean? They did her dirty.
What he's saying is he didn't they didn't do her justice. They gave her a lot of, they were, he does not like the way that they ended Clara's arc. He felt like it was, filled with injustice towards one of his more favorite companions.
Okay.
So yeah, in America, to do someone dirty is to basically, pardon my Hebrew, is to fuck them over.
Yeah. It's always the Hebrew, isn't it, with you?
Oh well, it's an occupational hazard.
Oh. It's always the French with me. Forgive my French.
Well, I don't speak French. I understand French, but I don't speak French very well. And I guess I could say pardon my Spanish, but then I'm just like yelling at people in Spanish. So do we have any other questions?
Clara's story. Can I say, ML Stone said, did they leave Clara's story open for a spin-off? I don't know if that was the plan at all. I have no insight into that, but it felt like that, didn't it? Well, we're going to get onto that one. I think it felt like that. Yeah.
I'm enjoying very much. Let me just say, what you and I have watched so far, Peter Capaldi, I have enjoyed quite a bit.
I enjoy it. I just I got angry at the moon in particular, but we'll come back to my anger, my rage at the stupid moon plot, and that really got my dander up again. My dander up.
Got your hackles going, huh?
Hackles going, yes. Dander up, hackles going. Something.
I would love to see a Welsh doctor. I have a softness for Welshmen particularly.
Not enough Welsh generally in Doctor Who. Given, I mean, Lee Evans putting on a Welsh accent was genius in that episode. I love you, Doctor. I love that, but it was all a bit ridiculous. It was sort of comedy Welsh rather than proper Welsh.
Given
frankly,
how much of it is filmed in Wales, you'd think they would have a Welsh doctor by now.
I think they should actually have David Tennant come back, and you know who they should put with him?
Who?
As a companion?
Donna.
Welsh actor? With David Tennant?
No, I don't know. Oh, Michael Sheen.
Michael Sheen.
Yeah. Michael Sheen.
Can you imagine?
Oh, that's
not anymore, baby.
My goodness. God, that would be an amazing. I don't know if you've watched any of this, and I know this is a little away from Doctor Who, but have you watched their show that they did during the pandemic?
I've only seen bits of it, clips of it. Yeah.
And I literally, I'm gonna watch it. I have to, because their dynamic when they did Good Omens was amazing.
And Good Omens was fantastic. And so season 2 of
when they
decided,
yeah, they started to do this kind of show where they do it like this, like they have a whole show where they're
Yeah.
basically talking to each other via Zoom, and I'm like,
We can imagine that in the
they make
TARDIS,
it
though.
happen.
Can you imagine that? you know, a kind of. But he'd like they
That would be
had. Well, you haven't
brilliant.
met him yet. But who's the character played by? Oh, I'm useless at names. The bald guy from Little Britain who comes to Doctor's Companion. You haven't seen yet, but have that kind of character. But instead of that, as Michael Sheen, as
Oh,
a kind of
oh,
a
oh, I
butler
think I
kind of
know who you
character.
mean.
A kind of
Yeah, yeah,
butler
yeah,
style
yeah.
character to the Doctor, played by Michael Sheen. Not an assistant,
Oh
but
my
more of a kind of butler, a kind of canine, but in human
God, that would
form
be
for the
such an
Doctor, played by
interesting.
Michael Sheen. It would be perfect.
Michael
Yeah,
Sheen
Matthew.
is an
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
I have a huge like. Listen, I understand that I'm like 195% gay, but I do have like a 1% crush on Michael Sheen.
Oh my
But
God.
that's because I did see him play Lucian in Underworld, and you and I've had extensive conversations about my feelings of Underworld and how I feel about werewolves. So, but that's not really Doctor Who
If you did,
related.
I've forgotten them because I was probably drunk at the time. But no, no. But seriously, it's good to
I
hear that
feel like that's
Lucian.
we talk a lot when you're drunk, and so I'm starting to become concerned.
That's only I hardly drunk anything since Christmas because we haven't had enough lives mainly.
Hmm.
But
Oh, I
I
know.
had this horrible rum, and I realised rum doesn't agree with me anymore. But anyway, I've got my wine back again now. Matt
Is it
Lucas, thank you.
Madeira?
Yeah, from Matt. Sorry, what did you say?
Are you drinking Madeira?
No, it's just normal, cheap, little bought wine. It has an alpaca on it, so it says it's from Chile. It's a Merlot, so it's just cheap wine,
Oh,
really.
we'll see. Oh, hey, 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 Chile is great. I'm Chilean.
I know, I know.
Yeah, so it's
So
probably
is
good
this wine.
wine.
So, so except for
I have to
oh,
say, and I know this is also not Doctor Who related, but I rewatched Raiders of the Lost Ark a couple of days ago, and so I think we definitely that's something we're gonna have to talk
well,
about soon.
I've been watching some old David Lean films with Denham Elliott in, and it's amazing that Denham Elliott was typecast very typecast. See, I'm
Typecast.
not drinking at all. Typecast very young as the nice guy who's going to die horribly in every film. So I think Denham Elliott playing in the Indiana Jones film was a lucky escape because most of his early he's a very handsome, slightly campish young man in many of the films he stars in the 40s, late 40s, 50s. And of course, like anyone's seen The Cruel Sea, Denham Elliott dies horribly in that. Um, oh God, what's the film? What's the film about the sound barrier? Sound barrier, David Lean film. Denham Elliott dies horribly. So poor Denham Elliott. Yeah, but sorry, I'm getting off track. I was just talking about Denham Elliott.
No,
But go on,
no,
go on.
I will agree here from Knighton. In Indiana Jones is kind of until I met Professor Howard. Indy was my favorite archaeologist. And in fact, when he and I started first conversing, I would say yes, but are you better than Indiana Jones? And obviously he is. Um,
Well, only because I don't steal things from pygmies or whatever he does in the films, or he doesn't. I don't go ripping up stuff. I don't punch enough
yeah,
Nazis
well, this
in the
is
flesh
true.
though.
The movie could have removed him, and could. I agree with Pops the Druid. In the movie could have removed Indiana Jones. The Nazis would have still gotten the Ark and died. Yeah, because
Yeah.
they didn't know
Oh,
any better. You're not
don't
supposed to
say
open the.
things like that. Yeah, it's true, isn't it though?
It's true though. But that's really. I love that Indiana Jones is literally a mixture of. It is literally religion, supernatural,
Yeah,
and archaeology. That's
yeah.
the whole
So,
context of it, and I love that bit. And I know we keep promising we're going to come and talk about it, and we end up just talking about Doctor Who. But
well,
that's what we
I,
do.
I've been you'll see just nothing to do with this, but I just want to say to anyone who's watching, I've got some exciting TikToks coming up because I've been to some museums the last couple of weeks. I went over to meet my first ever other TikToker, Spiritual Squirrel Vox, I met in person
Yes,
in Liverpool, and I
she
also
is
got to see
beautiful and lovely. And they sent me
Not
proof of
as
life.
much as
That
in
was
the
nice.
flesh. She's even more wonderful and more brilliant
Oh, I
in
believe
reality. But I also went to the Museum of Liverpool and did some TikTok videos of their collections. And I've just been over to Stoke-on-Trent to see the Potteries Museum and the Staffordshire Hoard. So there'll be lots of videos about archaeological collections. So I'm going to turn into a bit of a curator. You know, I'm
I
just a
love it.
humble
I mean,
curator.
I'm here for it. And for me, I'm still currently on my channel. I'm still currently doing my series on the history of Messianic Judaism and how they are not actually Jews. Fight me, I don't care. I'm going to be talking more about about Passover, because we know Pesach is going to be coming up in March. So I'll start doing my series on that, and I'm starting a Q&A, where it will literally be, come and ask questions of a Jewish person that you've always wanted answered, and see if I can help you out. I realize, much like anything, I'm not the rabbi for everyone, but who I am the rabbi for, I'm happy to be. So, and of course, interspersed with that is, of course, lives with Archaeodeath here, and I've just been, overwhelmed. Probably the best thing that came out of the pandemic for me is cultivating a deep friendship with you.
Likewise.
I was kind of, and as finding out that I'm like, oh, you like this? Me too. Let's do it. This all started just because we started watching Rings of Power together. That's
right. And I want to say, we should
started.
remind people, we are going to put these chats up on my Archaeodeath YouTube channel. Not that anyone watches them,
yes.
But it's important, I think, to archive our conversations, because I think there's going to be a nice series that people might dip into at some point, and a distinctive takes on a well-known series.
Plus, I think that I think we just we have good rapport together. And if you don't come for the content, just come for the way that we talk to each other. I think we're hilarious. Which, by the way, you can get a scarf. You cannot get this scarf. I have made certain promises to certain archaeologists that that one will stay one of a kind. But I am offering other seasons of the Doctor Who, and I don't know if I told you, but I have 3 orders for new ones. 3, and I was just shocked. I was shocked. Somebody's like, "Hey, so I understand you make those." I'm like, "Do how long it take? About a month." And they were like, "I'll take one," and I'm like, "Oh, okay."
It's a prized possession of mine, which I shall wear in future lives. It's currently in my work office.
I have designed child size as well. So if you have a tiny cosplayer, and I even have teddy bear sized, or should I say, I have moose sized. So I might have to wrap up a little one around a moose. And so I don't know if anyone has any more questions regarding this. I'm excited where we're going with Peter Capaldi. We're halfway through.
8. It's going to be good.
As soon as we're done with season 8, we'll schedule the next one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whatever happened to Scott Bakula? Was he supposed to do Doctor Who?
Do you know, that does sound... They've obviously did it. Scott appeared as a cameo in season 3 of What We Do in the Shadows, didn't he? Where they mistook him for Count Dracula, and they said, "Is that Scott Bakula?" Yeah, no, this is...
And I know,
stupid.
I know they revitalized Quantum Leap. There's a new Quantum Leap happening here in the United States. It's really good, with a wonderful Asian actor who has taken over as it's not the same character, but as a different character. It's not even a redo. It's kind of a continuation of the storyline that I really love. Count back.
No, that's the idea. So they think he's Count Dracula. They go, "Do you live in a castle in Romania?" And he goes, "No, I live in LA." They get this ridiculous little dialogue. It's like really ridiculous.
I have not watched What We Do in the Shadows, so I'm gonna have to. I didn't
realize there's 5 series. BBC has 3 of them up, and I'm on the 5th series, and it's painfully rubbishly good. It's just so shit, as you say, Red Star 2811. But it's Matt Berry being Matt Berry. It's like, what should we give? Let's create a role where Matt Berry can be Matt Berry. It's like another one.
Somebody
Spiritual
said,
Schoolbox is here. All hail.
Thank you for correcting Volkish Norse. I will say this. most recently, and I'm going to say this as somebody who is Jewish for those who are watching. I love the ADL website, but it is not a comprehensive, or nor is
No,
it an
that's what I meant.
exhaustive.
Yeah.
It is exhaustive in terms of its symbiology.
It's a starting
It does
point, isn't
not
it?
have everything. Yeah, it's very good for your like average person who is trying to see something,
Yes,
but
of
it
course.
is not the end all be all in terms of what white supremacists and far right people are using in terms of symbols and things of that nature.
Yeah, I think the implication
What do
was
you think of the Amazon? I haven't seen it yet. Wheel of Fortune. Have you seen it? Wheel of Fortune? Oh, Wheel
No.
of Time.
Wheel of Time.
I have not
No.
watched it yet.
No. No.
Oh, you think Red Star says it's awful. I haven't watched it as of yet. Is it based on the books, the Wheel of Time series?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think it is. It's another one of the. I haven't caught up, but I watched season 1 of. What's the one with the polar bears that talk? And I couldn't stand the first series, but I feel I have to watch it. I have to watch the rest of it as
The
well.
polar bears that talk?
Yeah, you know the what's it called? Where everyone's got a familiar, and I can't remember what it's called now. It's on the BBC. I need to watch it. Everyone's got a different animal. His dark materials. I hate that, but I'm going to watch it just because I need to watch it. You know, and anything that has got that James McAvoy in it, it's ruined. It for me. James McAvoy.
You hate James McAvoy?
I like him as an actor. It's everything conceptually I like about James McAvoy. Everything he should be in should be good. In the same way that everything that Michael Fassbender in should be good, and yet it ends up being shite, apart from if it's got a few exceptions. So for me, it just, I don't know, it just gets my dander
Jade's
right
mad
up.
at you. Jade just told you to shut your mouth. I actually, okay, well, I know you haven't seen this, but I loved James McAvoy in, it's with,
Bloody Shyamalan film was shit. I hated him in that.
It's, not Persephone, what is it? Hold on, see, you're going to have to make me look it up now. And who is the girl?
Oh, spiritual school, she's going to kill me. Great.
You know, I don't know that. I think that you're gonna. That's what happens.
This is where my TikTok career goes downhill, because it's always some random moment in the live that gets recorded, and I'll have 50 creators calling me out for my McAvoy hate, and suddenly I'll lose all my followers. I'll be mass reported, and like for the next year, everyone will be going on about McAvoy gate when that Archaeodeath turned on him. Last King of Scotland is actually really good.
Penelope.
Okay, I haven't seen it.
Of course you haven't, because you're a guy. Penelope is kind of a rom-com.
That's so prejudiced of you to say that I'm just a guy. How dare you? How dare you compartmentalise me?
You're right. I'm wrong here.
Yes,
Professor.
I'm totally offended.
Yes, Professor.
It gets my dander right
you
up.
Are not. Okay, yeah, Harry Potter absolutely ripped off Star Wars. I'm not going to fight you. That's true. Like, there's no doubt about that. And I have a complex relationship.
I think that's the only thing that I think Harry Potter ripped off almost everything. I mean, it's just all just basically.
This is true too.
Sort of. Anyway, never mind.
And what gets me is that and J.K. Rowling definitely pulled a George Lucas. Post writing these books, went back and went, no, I don't like the way I wrote that, so I'm going to change it. Definitely pulled a.
M.L. Stone has just said the words George Takei. Are we talking Doctor Who? Because if you're talking Doctor Who, I would say George Takei should play Doctor Who. Even he's ancient now, but if he just says something like "engage,"
he is not ancient. Oh, that would be a perfect. That would be his perfect line.
So old, maybe he's going to turn into one of these these sort of.
He's only like 80.
That's ancient, even for me. And that kind of voice.
And I believe it's George
Takei. Rich voice. Is it?
Takei.
Oh. I'm not getting into this. But the point is, do you know another great? If he's still going, another one who's still going, who'd be great as Doctor Who would be Mel Brooks. Just about.
Okay, so I don't know. Have you've seen History of the World Part 1? just to let you
long
know,
time ago.
in March on Hulu, History of the World Part 2 is coming out. It's going to be a 4-night thing.
It's great to be the king.
No, you're not. They're in the kitchen. I'll get them for you. Okay.
I didn't get a
Brett,
harumph out of that guy. I want to see.
Jade, we were talking about Brett Spiner earlier, and that would be an American that Howard would approve of as the Doctor.
Yeah, so
Garth Brooks.
No, Mel Brooks. I'm glad you didn't take.
No, somebody said so. I can't imagine Garth Brooks with that big hat.
Doctor, Time Lords and Country. It'd be like, no, that would. I don't know if that would work. I
don't think that would work.
I'll tell you. That makes a link to another great actor who would have played Doctor Who well, an Australian actor who would have played Doctor Who but sadly passed on, and his name has escaped me. But the link was thinking Garth Brooks, thinking Cowboys, thinking Brokeback Mountain, thinking
Heath Ledger
as Doctor Who would have been fan-freaking-tastic. Just saying.
You went to school with Matt Smith. Was he a Pratt? I have to ask. Was he a Pratt?
Well, I was just realising, watching again old films, that Matt Smith is almost like the stylistically is very similar to Trevor Howard. If anyone knows Trevor Howard, and I just thought, my God, it's like watching Matt Smith, and I thought, oh yeah, well, there's a lot of style, gestures and mannerisms very similar. Anyway, we're off on a massive random tangent, and I appreciate that
we are. But let me just say, I will say, I say thank you for your time.
Yes.
We'll be doing this again shortly. Of course, we'll have to have a sit rep after and see how we liked how we did. And you can always catch both of us. Archaeodeath has a wonderful platform if you're interested in archaeology, if you're interested in material culture, in the medieval era. He is the elite. He is the cream of the crop. He is the top of the top. And out of my list of archaeologists, he is my absolute favorite.
You're my favorite rabbi.
I better be your only rabbi.
Oh no, I've got loads of rabbis I know.
Oh, my heart. Oh. You can also find me right here at Rebel Rabbi. I talk a lot about Judaism. I talk about intersectionality, and I'm a nerd at heart. So thank you all for joining us for the humble 1.5 hours we were together. As always, it was a pleasure, Howard, to spend time with you. And until next time, we'll see you later.
Farewell, everybody. Thank you again. Take care.
For relaxing times, make it Archaeodeath time.